Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video. So this video is going to be the second part of the previous video I made. I was not planning to make this video, but I received so many comments regarding what I'm talking about. However, a lot of you shared criticism with me, not necessarily in an aggressive way or anything, and you raised some points that I didn't want to get into in the first video because then it would have been too long. But given that a lot of people are talking about it, I decided let's make a new video and talk about these points because they are definitely very important points that we have to raise. So before we get into it, I would like to ask you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button. I really appreciate if you can do this, and also while you're at it, check out my Facebook, Twitter and Instagram as well. Follow me there as well for more content about animal rights. In general, I want to talk about 3 points in this video. The first point, and one of the common things that people shared under the video, was saying that if it wasn't for vegans, the consumption growth or the animal products production growth would be even higher. So yes, we are killing more and more animals than ever, but if it wasn't for veganism, that number would be more. Now, this is something I wish I could agree on. However, if you actually look into the data and how the meat industry and the dairy industry and how just the animal agriculture industry works in general, you would understand that we would wish for it to be that simple. We would wish that the consumption habits of citizens would actually have an impact. However, it's not that simple. Why? Because of subsidies. Now, I want to say one thing. I'm sharing all of this after doing my research, but this doesn't mean that I would never change my stance. If anybody provides any proof or study or statistics that show the numbers and prove my points to be wrong, that's completely fine. So please feel free to do that if you want to look into this as well. The reason why I want to talk about subsidies is because it's one of these things that is holding the industry up, and it's like the backbone of the industry. If anything goes wrong, the industry relies on subsidies. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll quickly share what a subsidy is. So a subsidy is a benefit given to an individual, business, or institution, usually by the government. It's typically given to remove some type of burden, and it is often considered to be in the overall interest of the public, given to promote a social good or an economic policy. Now, the meat and dairy industry are so huge that they play a big part in lobbying, and they get politicians to put in subsidy rules and basically bail them out when they're making losses, to the point that they don't even have to sell their products to make any profit off of it. Yes, you heard that right. There are tons and tons and tons of stocks of animal products that are not sold, but the industry still gets paid for it because of the government subsidies that they receive. For example, I'm going to share with you an extremely recent example of how subsidies work. Now, this happened in Canada, and it is said that Canada is tweaking aid plan for dairy farmers hurt by trade pacts. So the Canadian government has narrowed its timeline to release the remaining 1.4 billion Canadian dollars, which is equal to 1.1 billion American dollars, of federal aid to supply managed dairy farmers by about 5 years, and set separate aid for poultry and egg producers. Separate aid for poultry and egg producers. This means the 1.1 billion that is being given does not even include the chicken and egg industry. And if you scroll down on the article, you will see that it says the government is fully behind their supply management sector, which supports their family farms and the vitality of the rural areas. This was said by the Minister of Agriculture, by the way. She also said today's announcement of a substantial compensation package for our dairy, poultry and egg farmers shows our support for a strong supply management sector for many generations to come. So I actually looked into this more, and I found more information written on the Canadian government's website. So the dairy farmers will receive, on the basis of their milk quota, cash payments of $468 million in 2020-2021 and $469 million in 2021 and 2022. The government is also announcing $691 million for 10-year programs for Canada's 4,800 chicken, egg, broiler, hatching egg and turkey farmers. They're looking into this by 10 years. That's how sure they are that they can go forward because of the subsidies that they receive. So between December 2019 and January 2020, more than 10,000 dairy farmers received a cash payment of $345 million. Today, the government has set a schedule to deliver the remaining $1.4 billion throughout direct payments to farmers over a timeline of only 3 years. So this is why I cannot at the moment agree that if it wasn't for vegans, numbers would be going up. Because the thing is, even with our boycott we're not able to make them actually feel an impact in their pockets. They just don't. The government has their backs. Now, I personally really do not have enough knowledge or experience in dealing with subsidies and how we can fight against it. However, there are some groups in different parts of the world that work on ending the subsidies. So basically lobby against the subsidies that the farmers receive in different ways, or they just try to infiltrate with their own lobbying, lawyers, etc., etc. One of them is the Agriculture Fairness Alliance. You can check them out and check the work they do. And I don't want to get too much into this because there's still more points that we have to talk about. Now, the second point was that veganism is having the effect that we believe we're having, but because of population growth, we're seeing more and more animals getting slaughtered every single year. Now, this is not completely false. However, this is just another reason why I made the video, because I don't believe we are taking a step back, reevaluating, adapting our strategies or our campaigns to the population growth factor and then giving it another try. So I've been seeing the activism movement doing amazing work, really with the best intentions for the last 3 or 4 years, but I also have been seeing mostly the same things being done over and over again without any change or actual reflection on how much this is affecting the supply and demand system, the agricultural system, the subsidies, etc., etc. So if we look into it, the population growth problem is actually one of the worst problems that we are facing, along with subsidies, because even if we make thousands and thousands of vegans every single day, there's more non-vegans being born at the same time. We'll never be able to catch up with that by changing people's mind one by one. And again, I wish we could. I wish it was that easy. At the same time, by the way, I'm not saying don't do that. I think that's amazing. We should do that. And I will continue doing that, of course. But we have to also have other strategies to deal with the main issues that we're having. Just because one of them is not the best tactic doesn't mean we should just throw it aside and completely ignore it and bash everyone who's doing that and then say we should do something else. No, we continue doing that. That is needed. Of course, we need to change people's minds. Of course, we need to educate people. So go on with that if that's what you're doing, but also check how much impact it's having and whether or not you can customize it or change it in a way that it can have even more impact. Now, regarding population growth, I do have to say one important thing that I saw in the comment section. Someone mentioned that then vegans should have as many kids as we can so that we can have more vegans. You have to keep in mind, kids are not robots. They're not programmed in a way they will never change. Kids are not yours in the way that they will never be allowed to do what you don't want them to do. Kids are influenced by their surrounding. Kids are brainwashed by media, by corporations, by everything you are brainwashed by. So just because you have a vegan partner and possibly a vegan kid, that does not guarantee in any way that your kid will remain a vegan or animal rights activist for the rest of their lives. Now, I used to think that this is definitely how it works, but I have seen countless and countless examples of people who have vegan kids from birth, and then the kids grow up and then they get influenced and their surrounding changes and they start eating animal products. It's also because they get bullied. It's also because they start feeling a pressure that they've been raised differently by the rest of the members of society, and they start wondering about eating animal products, and they end up doing it because they want to try it, and then they get that positive reinforcement from their friends, and they're no longer vegan. And next thing you know, you're causing more suffering by bringing someone into existence. Now, there's another point as well. This is a whole other video that I have to make, and that's the fact that even a vegan animal rights activist and sustainable person will cause way more damage just by existing in this day and age, living in the societies we live in, the way we live. So if you actually look at the studies when it comes to the most sustainable thing you personally can do for the environment, and as an extension for the animals, because the animals' habitat is the environment, is to not actually have kids. However, I'll get into this in another video. So for that, definitely subscribe so you can watch that video when it's out. And just to show you how bad the population growth issue is, here are some numbers that I brought up. So population growth from 1800 to 2020, you can see how in 1950 everything started changing. I mean, look at this growth. This is just, I have no words for it. And if we want to see how it will continue, we'll see that up until 2050, 2059, 2056, this is still a major growth, and this is when the world's population is going to be around 10 billion people, and it's not until the year 2100 that the numbers are actually going to go down, but even then they're going to be so high. Now we'll continue with the graphs in a bit, but the third point I want to talk about is something that I realized I should have mentioned in the previous video when I was commenting back to some of the comments left under the previous video, and those are the BRIC countries. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the BRIC countries, and what I mean by BRIC is BRIC. That stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China. However, another country was added to this list in 2010, and that was South Africa. So these 5 countries form a very important economic book, and this is something that the whole world is looking at the moment. Why? Because they account for more than 40% of the world's population and more than 20% of the world's GDP. More than 40% of the world's population. 5 countries. Where exactly am I going with this? I think you know. So let's get back to the graphs, and I'm sure now you're going to realize that I had actually included in the graphs these countries and the United States. So here we are: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And you can see how these countries' population is growing with time. It's on a constant growth. So we see how fast these countries are growing, but not only population-wise, this is also economy-wise, how much production and how much consumption is included in these 4 countries. If these 5 countries make more than 40% of the world's population, what's their animal consumption graphs looking like? So of course I wasn't surprised when I saw the statistics and the numbers, and I realized that every single one of them has a meat production value that is growing every single year, especially since the year 2016. And yes, India and South Africa included. It's a minor growth compared to Brazil, for example, but it's still a massive growth when you look at the individual animals that are getting killed. So what does this mean? Should we just give up because it sounds hopeless? No, we should not give up just because the numbers are kind of scary or the numbers show a very dark future for the animals. I believe this should just make us want to change for the better. Change as in try to actually look at our impact, have better strategies, have better campaigns, use pressure campaigns as a tactic, not only just one thing. And some people did think that I'm being negative or I'm dismissing people who are doing activism, but the thing is, I'm an activist myself, so everything I'm saying applies to me as well. For the past 1.5 years, I have been looking into studies, and I have been doing surveys when it comes to, for example, my university lectures and school lectures, to actually look if it's working. And when I compared that to, for example, doing street activism for 4 hours, I realized, well, in 4 hours in a school, I have a much bigger impact than 4 hours on the street. So I started concentrating more on that. But before this, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I wasn't really reflecting much on my activism. I wasn't looking at the numbers. I wasn't looking if what I'm doing is having the impact that I think I'm having, just because the vegan milk section looks bigger than the dairy milk section. Please stop confusing consumer gains for animal wins. It's not the same thing. Is it good that there are more vegan options? Of course. I'm not sad. I'm not complaining that there are more vegan options. I'm very happy that it's there. It makes veganism more accessible, which is one of the most important things as well. It makes the prices of the vegan products go lower, which is also very important. But these are just consumer gains. As I said in the previous video, I want to repeat, are you an animal rights activist to have more vegan burgers and nuggets and milk products, or are you an animal rights activist to have an impact on the lives of these animals that are getting slaughtered every single day? So, to conclude, I am very happy, I'm extremely happy with the amount of vegan products that are on the supermarket shelves, with the amount of vegan options that are in restaurants, in junk food restaurants, in healthy restaurants, everywhere. I'm happy they exist. They are very important for the growth of our movement, and they are very important for the accessibility of a plant-based diet. I'm very happy with the amount of activists that are getting active, with the amount of organizers that are organizing events and campaigns and strategies. I'm very grateful for everyone who is in this community, who is in this movement and selflessly fighting to achieve animal liberation. But I wish we could all sit down together and have this talk, because without having this talk, Why are we doing this activism? This is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that we as a movement should be doing. Check how much impact we're having and be realistic. Everything I've shared are numbers. Numbers are not emotional, numbers are not negative, numbers are realistic. Okay, and if the future or the present looks negative, it's not because I'm being negative, it's because the numbers are showing something negative. So again, I realized I made the conclusion really long, but I do want to make sure everybody gets my point. I do want to repeat that I appreciate everybody's efforts. I'm very happy with the change that we have achieved so far. However, I do believe with the numbers that we have and the strength that we have and the tools that we have, we can achieve so much more as long as we're being realistic and we're looking at how much impact we're making. I do also want to add that just because I talked about Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa doesn't mean that you get a green card to go around and make racist claims against these countries. These countries are most of the time adapting to Western diets or Western influences. Therefore, you are kind of responsible in that as well. So please don't take this as a green light for you to make racist claims against these countries. We have to work all together to see what we can do, but we also have to work with the activists in these countries to see what we can achieve together. So that being said, don't be racist. These are one of the biggest obstacles that I believe we have. I think another obstacle is that we're not having this conversation enough times. I think having this more often would be very helpful. And to be honest, I think I only saw 1 or 2 mean comments or very negative comments on my previous video, which is the lowest I have ever gotten on any video, which just means that people really want to have this conversation. So don't wait for me to make a video, start it yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me if you have any strategies in mind or any campaigns or pressure campaigns that you would like to work on. Also, a massive shout out for my patrons who make it possible for me to do all these videos and all the activism that I'm doing. So if you want to support my work, check out my website SEBALEX.org and also ethicsOverhabits.com if you want to get organic and fair trade vegan merchandise to spread the message in your day-to-day life. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.